So that was the UK media looked at in isolation. What about contrasting the two collections that we made of the UK data and the global media data? What I've called there, for sake of brevity on the slide, the UK DMC, the UK Disability Corpus, and the GMDC, the Global Media Disability Corpus. Here we're using keywords, as I promised. We're taking keyness in both directions, comparing the UK data to the global data to see what's key in the UK data, and then conversely taking the global data and comparing it to the UK data in order to see what's key in the global data. What do we see? Well, the results are quite notable. Again, as one often does with keywords, I've organized them into broad areas, broad semantic fields, I might say. So there are a set of keywords relating to sport that occur principally in the GMDC, the global media material. Similarly, locations there, peoples there, business, finance, media, society, language. Sport obviously is the standout result from that list. Note one or two other things. Note the presence there of certain words to do with location and people in the UK, proper nouns, and remember back to what I said about the keyword technique. It often yields those up and shows you interesting social, sometimes geographical, difference and cultural differences between the two corpora that you're contrasting. So note the point about sport, note the point about proper nouns, but also note under people the interesting words children and mum, which are key in the UK data. This could be an indication perhaps that in the UK data, disabled people are framed more in terms of their social relationships than in the non-UK data. Notice also, of course, in terms of society there we have NHS. The NHS has a duty of care towards disabled people in British society, and that is a key feature of the NHS's provision. Let's look now at collocates of disabled in both data sets. What do we see? Well, again, we've taken the collocates and ordered them by some type of broad semantic category. We see people, age indicators, extent of disability, description of disability, duration of disability, descriptions of ill health, markers of non-disability, access and facilities, administration, language. But the points I want to focus on here are A, age indicators. Note that what we suspected from the keywords, this sort of social framing that may be occurring around disabled people, is even more marked in the collocates of disabled in the UK data. While elderly and children are indeed collocates of disabled in the GMDC, in the UK data there's a much broader set of collocates indicating that these people are being viewed with reference to people of different ages, but with some type of social link to them. Children, elderly, child, adults, older, old. So a mixture of age and that social framing. Also, note importantly, the field access and facilities. There is a stronger emphasis in those UK collocates on access and facilities for the disabled. And that leads me to another finding about the representation of disabled people in this data. I'd argue that the development and maintenance of equal access is seen to be of critical importance in the UK national media compared against the global media. Okay, what about then in general English? You might say, well, actually, what you're doing is you're just looking at newspaper articles which are talking about disabled people. Maybe all you're doing is describing what happens in newspapers. And actually in general British English or general American English, the picture is reversed or indeed entirely different. This is when we can go back to the corpora that are based on in Sketch Engine that I introduced early in this series of lectures. Those are interesting corpora because you can divide them between British English and American English. So you can start to look in the period between 2008 and 2012, or at least contrasting those two time periods, you can start to look at how the word disabled collocates with other words. And you find some very interesting things. As you can see from the first slide, one thing that you see immediately is that there are no collocates which are just exclusively British English collocates. When we look at American English, we see an emphasis on types of disabilities, descriptions of ill health, and also low income and military service, which are just absent as collocates from British English. Okay, well, what about the collocates that disabled is modified by? Do we then start to get some sense in which British English is more distinctive from American English? Again, no. They break broadly into three categories. They describe the extent of disability, a description of the disability, or the duration of the disability. And once again, what is marked is that there are no collocates which are unique to British English, and the majority of the collocates that we're finding are unique to American English. This leads to another interesting finding, I would claim. There is a tendency in American English to categorize disability to a much finer degree than in British English, and to construe perceived ability on this basis.